Yes, this is the Well Actually podcast. Thank you for listening. The Well Actually podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. And videos of the podcast are available on the official YouTube channel. And if you don't have any of the streaming services, you can get every episode of the podcast on thewellactuallypod.com. So as usual, we're going to have the Game of Thrones recap at the end of the episode. So there will be a pretty obvious disclaimer when we get to that point. So if you haven't caught up to the most recent episode, you might want to skip that part. All right, so let's get to the show. So there's some topics that I wanted to get into a while ago, but I kind of had to postpone them a bit because some more timely issues came up, and I didn't want to have to gloss over them because of how important I thought they were in the grand scheme of what I had planned for the podcast. So in this instance, I'll refer to it as educational philanthropy. And the first name that I'm going to bring up is LeBron James. And it's not just because I think he's the best basketball player ever. You're welcome to debate that and you'll lose. But it's because of what he has done off the court. And it's his I Promise school. So I'll give you some background on it. I Promise is a collaboration between the Lebron James Family Foundation and the Akron Public Schools. So it's for 240 third and fourth graders with plans to add grades each year till 2022 so that it'll house between third and eighth graders. So what makes this institution or this school unique is that it's not taking the best of the best. It's not like a charter school. It actually focuses on those who were in the bottom 25th percentile of their classes. So these are children who are underachieving in the classroom for any number of reasons. And it's taking a holistic approach to education. So not only are they focusing on the student, but they're also focusing on the parent as well, because they realize that a healthy and happy home is what makes it conducive for effective learning. So they provide GED classes as well as job placement assistance for the parents. So when this came out, it was like a really big deal because it was seen as an experiment. Like, okay, he's not even going through the charter route. Like, he's going through a public school. And I'm pretty sure there were a lot of people who were thinking it wasn't going to do well. So fast forward to this year, and there was sort of like a progress report, and 90% of the students met or exceeded individual growth goals in reading and math, and they're actually outpacing their peers across the district. So what this is saying is that not necessarily that they're outperforming them in like head-to-head reading or math or whatever, but what it's saying is that the growth that they're experiencing in this I Promise school is significantly more than what others are achieving in other places. But this isn't just like an apples to apples comparison, because these are students that are starting from a much, much lower starting point. But I think it's still something that is highly commendable, because these are students who, under normal circumstances, would be left behind and would fall into some really, really dark circle or dark hole where it would probably be very difficult for them to recover. But anyway, like I said, these were students who were identified as the worst performers, and some were even branded as having behavioral problems. So you can imagine like someone being as young as 8 years old and you're already being considered as a risk for not graduating. Like, do you understand what it means to be written off like so completely at such an early age? So it's important to note that it's still a work in progress, because like I said, it's an approach that is not considered conventional. So what it is one person deciding like he's going to put his considerable resources to work with his connections, with how he feels like people in his community, because this is in Akron, Ohio, where he's from, and he's decided that he's going to give back to that community. And recently, he actually gave a check in conjunction with Dick's Sporting Goods of $1 million to fund a gym, because he felt that in addition to education, being active also aids in learning. And this is the entire program that he has set up. It has the children are given breakfast and lunch, and they're trying to put it in a way where they don't want any of these kids to fall through the cracks, because this is a problem in urban communities where children are sort of left behind by the entire system. So it's not necessarily like, okay, one child in the class is underperforming. Like, there are entire schools or even districts that are underserved, and in turn they underperform, and then it's just this like vicious cycle where once you're so far behind, you're less likely to graduate, and then once you're less likely to graduate, you're less likely to get a job, and then you're less likely to be a productive member of society, and then you enter the criminal justice system. So I just think that this is something that is like highly commendable, and there are a lot of details on this where you see it and you be like, it'll make you wonder like why this isn't more widespread. But then I guess education or public education isn't really considered that much of a big deal. And one thing that I found that like really blew me away was that uh, there is sort of a clause there, or more of like it's called "I promise." So there's a promise in there where he said, if any student completes the program and graduates from high school, LeBron James will cover their tuition, their full tuition, at the University of Akron. So this is a pledge that he's making to third and fourth graders going in. If you stick to the program, get your grades up, get all the way through high school, your college tuition is already getting paid for. And I mean, regardless of how you think about him as a player or whatever, I think this is just incredibly impressive. So similar to that story and like how you can make a difference, there's a principal at a local high school here in New Jersey, and his name is Akbar Cook. So he's the principal of Westside High School in Newark, New Jersey. And he came up with some radical but yet simple ideas that go above and beyond the call of duty. So he was featured on the Ellen Show because of what he came up with. And honestly, it's another one of those things where like, how come so no one else thought of this before? So a little bit of background on him as well. As the principal of Westside High, he sort of like noticed how some students were becoming like more and more absent to classes. And as an educator, he realized like the more you miss school, the increased chances of dropping out because you're not going to graduate. And when he got to the root cause of what a lot of this, like the absences were, it was because kids were being teased by not having clean clothes. So not having clean clothes or not smelling good. So it's like when you think about that, something so simple can have such like a profound impact on someone's life, on someone's educational trajectory. And so what did he do? Something very simple, but yet radical. He installed washing machines in the school. So it's in the school basement. And once news of this spread, he was featured on the Ellen Show, and they were inundated with so many donations and of like laundry detergent and supplies. Like he actually was able to ask for toiletries and donations in terms of school uniforms. So not only were they able to clean the uniforms they already had, but they were able to get some more uniforms as well, which was actually put into like a free store within the school. And the fact that he got so many of these, and as an educator who wasn't just thinking of himself, he was able to pay it forward and make donations to another school And this was like the Trenton Public School. So it was another school district in New Jersey. And his reasoning is that you could have the best curriculum, but if a student comes to school hungry, disheveled, or smelling a certain way, an amazing teacher won't get through to them. And like I said, simple yet radical. And the outreach initiative is what it led to, like a whole bunch of like donations. And it's also how when people say something about performative philanthropy, you might see it that way, and that's sort of a cynical way of looking at things. But you posting or you sharing your donation could also spur others to do the same. So I don't know if some people have been discouraged from posting what they share or posting what they've donated or causes that they support. But what you don't know is that you bringing awareness to such a cause not only educates other people on this cause, but it also spurs other people to donate. So, and like I said before, research shows that chronically absent students are at a high risk to earn low grades, drop out of school, and fall prey to the juvenile justice system. So, but then the thing is, reasons for these absences could vary. It could be like they might be kids with special needs, or they might even be kids with kids of their own, or taking care of younger siblings. They might be part of the welfare system or no transportation, and something as extreme as homelessness. So when it's a student from a family with limited resources, survival often becomes like a competing priority, and it's just going to make it more difficult for anyone to choose education over just their basic survival. So although like it's hard to find like where like or how to measure the direct impact, Professor Akbar said like absences are down between 7 and 10% from like this point last year. And that is, if it's something as simple as putting in a washing machine just so that students don't feel the need to skip school off of just their clothing, then that is just unbelievable. And he believes in serving students holistically, ensuring that their needs are met. And he thinks that that should be the new normal for urban education. And just in case you thought Professor Cook was, Principal Cook was done, he also has the Lights On program, which is in its 4th year. And he opens the school every Friday night till 11 p.m. And the students are free to read, play basketball, or engage in a variety of other creative experiences. So his thinking is the longer the children are in a safe place, the less time they have to be out getting in trouble or actually being the victims of just like being an innocent bystander and like maybe in a violent neighborhood. And these efforts are actually being funded by the community and also alumni of Westside High School. And some of the alumni actually volunteer in these programs. And the students are also served warm meals. And during the summer, when students are usually more likely to run around and get in trouble because there's nothing to do, the program is going to be held 3 nights a week. And it's kind of heartwarming to see like people believing in students who are so often forgotten and neglected and just written off because of simple geography or, well, in most cases, race. But it just goes to show like just giving these students a chance and being treated like they matter by their community and by their principal could take them a long way. And even on a more micro level from the first two, a friend of mine also has a program set up and the sole purpose of it is to provide conducive learning environment in schools in Africa. So it's called the Back to School Transformation. And you can visit backtoschooltransformation.org to see all the information, whether you want to read up on how the program is set up or the individual goals or projects that they have lined up, or if you even want to donate, it's all there. And I visited the site, and it is very expansive in what they plan on doing, in what they have done, and it lets you know, like, okay, this is something that is very legit. So they aim to provide school supplies, equipment, and facilities to both primary and secondary schools. And all of this is with an emphasis on rural locations that are typically neglected even in countries with resources like Nigeria. And don't even get me started on what is considered education in Nigeria, especially in rural areas. Because when you look at some of the pictures that she put up, it's like how can you expect a child to learn, even with as much enthusiasm and curiosity that they may have, when they're like sitting in like what would be considered like an abandoned building, and like, but they're still there and they're trying. And this is why I really commend what she's doing. I'm going to post a link to her site on the wellectuallypod.com page. So if you're listening to this on the site, you could just scroll down and you can get a direct link to her website, and it'll let you know just exactly what she's trying to do. And again, if you're interested in donating, there's a donate button on her site and it lets you can see everything that it's above board and all the necessary documentation that lets you know that this is legit. And this is just a person who she's a grad student and her passion is education. And what she is trying to do is making sure that students who are even further neglected within a country that, sure, it has the resources, but a lot of these resources are not necessarily used properly. And this just goes to show, like, whether you have incredible means like LeBron James, or you're the principal of the school in the biggest city in New Jersey, or you are one person who just has the passion to try and make a difference, it is really up to you. So whether you want to take part or start something on your own, or even make a donation to another cause, I highly suggest it. And I hope like this is something that people will look into in whatever aspect it may be. It might be education, it might be health, it might be community outreach, it might be advocacy of some sort. But I just hope that whatever platform we have, we use it to the best of our ability. All right, we're going to take a short break and then we'll be right back. All right, so I wanted to get in a quick TV recommendation here. I know we haven't done a lot of those since we started talking about Game of Thrones, but this one really caught my attention and I got through it pretty quickly. And it's a show on Netflix called Dead to Me. It stars James Marsden. He was Cyclops in the original X-Men trilogy. Linda Cardellini, she was in ER, still the greatest medical drama ever on TV. And Christina Applegate, who has been killing it since Married with Children. I just found out that actually came out in 1986. But yeah, it's produced by Adam McKay and Will Ferrell. And it's crazy. They have been doing like a lot of really interesting work lately. Like Adam McKay, he's the executive producer on a show called Succession, which is on HBO, and that should be coming back soon as well. And he's also the producer on Hustlers, which is that movie that's going to be starring J-Lo and Cardi B. So it's like they're really doing some interesting work here. So Dead to Me is a comedy, but it's not a sitcom. Don't get that twisted at all. And basically, grief is one of the characters in the show. It's talking about coping with grief and how people handle grief differently. And the premise of the show is the main character, Christina Applegate, her husband is killed in a hit and run. And it goes through her journey of how she's handling and coping with grief. And also she's sort of a vigilante in a way, but not like a Caped Crusade or anything like that. But she's sort of trying to handle things on her own. And I'll say this, like the pacing of the show is done very well. Like there's a big reveal at the end of the first episode, which you could kind of see coming a little bit, but the reveal at the end of the second episode, that one was gang. That was like, okay, I see what y'all are doing and I'm with it. and it's a show I couldn't recommend highly. Like it's a really good show, and the thing with Netflix is they give you 10 episodes, so they're not wasting any. There's no fattening episodes where you're just like, okay, this is a waste of time. No, they get right to it, and they let you know, like, okay, this is a show you're going to want to watch, and they make sure it's worth your time. So that's Dead to Me, and it's, like I said, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. So we're at the portion now where we're going to discuss Game of Thrones. So if you're not up to date on Game of Thrones, you may want to stop listening now. But before that, I'd like to remind you that you should please subscribe, rate, and review the Well Actually podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher, as well as the YouTube channel, in case you're interested in videos of the podcast. So, this episode of Game of Thrones, which seems to have gotten people losing their shit. Like, there's actually a petition going around asking HBO to reshoot the episodes. And I'm like, what is your problem? Like, what kind of, you know what, I'm not even gonna get worked up on that. I'm just gonna, like, how are you people so, like, you're like, no, that's not what I wanted, do it again. Like, please, they already got your eyeballs, and all those people have gone on to other shows. Like, just get over it. By the way, the episode you people have been complaining about so much, which was episode 5, the penultimate episode of the show, is the highest rated episode of Game of Thrones ever, beating out the season premiere of this year, beating out the previous most watched episode, which was the season 7 finale. So yes, the one that you guys have been complaining about the most is also the most watched one ever. Anyway, so to the details of it. The way I usually watch is I watch unbothered with anything, not as like anyone trying to do reviews or as a critic or anything, but just as a fan. And then I check out some reaction to maybe there's something I missed, and then I go back and watch it again. So yes, that's 3 hours of Game of Thrones right there. So what I didn't catch initially was that first part where Varys is writing and the little girl comes to talk to him. That was actually an attempt to poison Daenerys, where she comes in and says that she's refusing to eat. And I'm like, wow, okay, so y'all are just, he was that brazen with his attempt to make sure that Jon Snow is the ruler, and I don't even know, man. It's like everybody's out of pocket at this point. And the scene with Daenerys and Jon Snow, and he's basically telling, like, I don't want to be king, and she's still trying to kiss him, and like, okay, are we going with love or fear here? And she put him in a very weird position, but I think he thought he handled that properly, and no, she wasn't having it. And I think that's another point where her slow descent into madness is just like, everyone sees it as this like big drop, but it's like little things have just been just been happening, little drops in the bucket, and then all of her trusted advisors are just getting offed one by one. Like, you know, once like Joran was killed, that was like her tactical person, and then Missandei was sort of her conscience, and she was more like the diplomat of the crew. And now that she's lost that, as well as the person who probably braided her hair, because her hair was looking tragic. But again, who am I to judge? Like, all I got is waves. But anyway, moving on, like, once like, she didn't even like yell Dracarys for her. It was sort of like a whisper. It was understated. And I think maybe that's why the dragon like took his time. Like, are you sure you want me to do this? But you know, Rubman got toasted. And one of the issues that I had with this season leading up to this episode was how everything felt sort of rushed, in that they went with drama over common sense, and that all the tactics being used by Daenerys and Jon Snow were like the worst possible things to do just so that they could come up with something quote unquote dramatic. Like, look at how much devastation one dragon did, but meanwhile 2 dragons couldn't like torch the Iron Fleet, or even against the White Walkers. Like, all they did was like spray 1 row and that was it. But now you got 1 dragon just like Rambo, just out there tearing shit up, even though literally all of the ships are like targeting for it. And like, that just shows you that they could have done this even after the first dragon was killed. But no, they were just trying to be all dramatic or whatever. But yeah, it seems like they were more concerned with having good shots or things that look good on tape, rather than advancing the story in a satisfying way. But hey, I guess HBO just didn't want to have to unleash 2 dragons on the city at the same time. That might have been, I can't even say overkill, because what happened with just 1 was overkill. Like, they just burnt everything and everyone. And speaking of everything, Grey Worm wanted all the smoke. In fact, he wanted smoke and a half. Like, at one point, he looked like he was ready to square up with Jon. Like, it's like, either you start killing people or I kill you too. And it was, yeah, and the suspense when everybody was waiting for someone to ring the bell, and you're just looking at the TV like, okay, are they going to do it or not? Like, is it going to happen in time? And then you hear the bell, and then you just let out a big ass sigh, like, oh, thank goodness. But then you remember somebody said, I choose violence. And next thing you know, King's Landing has turned into Suya. Like, at that point, Jon Snow is like trying to hold his men back, but then they're like, nah, bro, it's jungle rules now. Everything goes. And seeing the carnage from ground view, like with the citizens, and then from Arya's point of view, it's just like, bruh, that's when you realize just how devastating the whole thing was. And bruh, even Aaron Rodgers, like, he was one that like ran into the corridor and got burnt up. I'm like, how did Aaron Rodgers end up in Game of Thrones? But I mean, if you're a fan of the show and you're a celebrity, I guess you that's one way of using your celebrity status. And Euron is the most, but I still beat dude in King's Landing. He even turned it to another level. I still killed you though, while he was dying. And him and Jamie, like, they try, like, this show, they try to make Jamie seem both incompetent and a skilled fighter at the same time. And that is maddening, because you're like, it just goes along with, they want to make certain things effective only when it suits them. But again, it's all about drama for them rather than making sense at this point. And then of course the Hound versus the Mountain, and that's just that is a fight for the ages, where it's like Sir Gregor was actually harder to kill than the Night King. Another thing which was maddening. But the way they he just mushed old boy out the way. It was like, obey your queen, Sir Gregor. And oops, and he's just busted open like a watermelon. And at that point, Cersei just tiptoed past them like there were a couple arguing, and like, y'all can handle this, and I'm just going to try and escape. And the moment Jaime and Cersei realized they were going to die, it was poetic in a way, but even though like their death was still unsatisfying. And I don't want to hear anything where it's like HBO tries some bull and they're actually not dead yet, and no, don't even do that. Just let that be it. You've already disappointed us once. Don't compound it by bringing them back in some weird way. No, just let us move on and see what Daenerys is going to do when she's now hosting her own parade after killing everybody. But where the hell did she get all those Dothraki? Like, I thought they were extinguished. Like someone turned off their light tower. What happened? Like, where? Like, what happened? Like, did was there a train to King's Landing that they just got on and they were? I don't understand. Another thing where it feels forced, because you're like, a lot of the things like traveling at this point, they're all getting on a spaceship as far as I'm concerned, because there's no way everybody's getting everywhere so quickly to the point that they're surprising each other at this. Like, everyone is just surprising everyone. People are disappearing, reappearing. People that are supposed to be, you know what? I think all the complaints, whatever we're going to say, the final episode is obviously going to be the most watched episode in the history of this show, and probably in the history of HBO. But at this point, everyone has their theories, and I'm not in the business of making predictions or theories, because if you get it right, you win nothing, and if you get it wrong, people are just going to play that back at you, and I don't have time for that. So I just want a satisfying, I don't want a happy ending, I just want a satisfying ending where, in fact, I don't even know if I want a satisfying or I want a chaotic ending, because of how many people are going to lose their shit when something goes not how they wanted it to. And because they're so far ahead of the books at this point, all the people who have read the books can't bring the ITK into it. But yeah, the series finale, the final episode, is coming up this Sunday. And even though HBO has greenlit 3 shows, but they're actually going to be prequels, which happened like hundreds or maybe even thousands of years before the current show on TV right now. But I don't even know how they're doing 3 simultaneous shows in production, but that's another story. But yeah, this one is going to be, it's going to be an experience. And again, stay off social media, because I guarantee, like, at this point, like, you're gonna see messages on MySpace and High Five. So don't even complain about it. Like, just disconnect your phone or go hide in a military bunker or something. But yes, this is the end of this episode. I want to thank you for listening. As usual, please subscribe, rate, and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. You can also get videos of the podcast on YouTube. And you can also check out thewellactuallypod.com. And if you have comments, questions, suggestions for the show, you can reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, this is like the first time I'm actually making an announcement for a future episode. The next episode is going to be the TV episode. So it's going to be news on your favorite TV shows, whether they're getting renewed, canceled, given the last season. So it's going to coincide with the review of the series finale of Game of Thrones. So if there are any shows you're curious about, or if you're listening specifically to get some TV show recommendations, that is the episode for you. So that will be our 10th episode. So please be on the lookout for that. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or you just want to talk back to the show, you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Well Actually Podcast. All right, thank you very much, and we'll do this again next week.